All right. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be sitting here with the creative team of She Spreads. We're going to talk a little bit about this amazing show, but before we dive in, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Elsha. I work for Downstage Theater. I am the Community Programs Director here and today's fun host for this evening, or this morning, or whenever it is that you're watching this. I'm going to pass it off to Claire to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Claire. Thank you, Elsha. I'm Claire. I'm the artistic director at Downstage and also the co-creator and director of She Spreads. And I'm going to pass it off to Neema.
Hello, I'm Neema. I'm also a co-creator and performer on She Spreads. And let's go to Darwin.
Thank you. I am Darwin, and I am co-creator, performer, and producer on She Spreads. And I will pass it off to Zoe.
Hello, I'm Zoe, and I am also a co-creator, performer, and producer of She Spreads.
Amazing. So, welcome everyone. We're just going to chat today a little bit about the show, your process as artists on the show. And I guess the first thing I'd love to know is what was the process of creating She Spreads like? Feel free to chime in, whoever wants to go first.
Well, I can start with that because Zoe and I met working on like at a workshop, and we really liked each other's artistic sensibility and each other's vibe, and so we wanted to produce actually a written play, and I had seen a show that Clare directed that Neema was in, called Salome's Clothes, and I loved it so much that Zoe and I approached Clare, and Clare brought Neema on, and then we didn't get the rights for that show, but we liked everybody so much that we sort of suggested that we create something ourselves.
And then began a very long and juicy process of play creation. So we basically, correct me if I'm wrong, everyone, but other than Claire and Darwin, we were sort of writing a piece for ourselves for the very first time. Sorry, my son is in the background, so sorry if you hear that or see legs and arms flailing. Yeah, this was the first time co-writing a piece for most of us. Is that right, everyone? Except for Claire? Yeah. And so we began a very long process of trying to flesh out a piece of theater that we wanted to play in for the next few years. We were inspired by the shape of the piece that we had originally wanted to produce, which She Spreads doesn't mimic necessarily, but is certainly inspired by, in terms of the fact that She Spreads is interwoven monologues. And we just started playing around with, Claire, you've mentioned this before, that we were first inspired by the word fair, and then we started riffing on that. And we also were taking inspiration from women in jobs or economies that felt interesting to us. For instance, there was a podcast that we listened to about a female butcher, which Darwin introduced to us, which we found really juicy and inspiring. And so that sort of took us in the direction of one of the characters. So the play kind of unraveled itself to us and unveiled itself, you know?
Yeah, and I remember that at one point when we were talking about the commodification of the land, and the commodification of women, and these intersections, and then we talked, and when Darwin came along with the butcher thing, in my mind, that's somehow how we started getting settled on Fort Mac and like Fort McMurray's story and the story about the oil sands and the supporting industries around the oil sands. That's, in my mind, how we got to that place. But I don't know if other people have different memories of that part of the trajectory. Because people always ask me that, like, why did you decide to talk about Fort Mac in particular. And I'm like, I think that's why.
I don't remember. Like, it's been so many years now that we have been working on this and coming back to it, that it's really interesting to hear you all talk about how it started, because I totally don't remember. I don't remember how we got to Fort Mac. It feels like we got to a place and discovered it was like Fort McMurray. We got to a place and discovered it was like Alberta, or like a place like, you know, some of us know. But honestly, how do things get created? You know, this was a long process.
And we went through 2 of your children's births in actual creation time, which I thought was so beautiful. Like, you know, really pregnant at times, Neema and Zoe. I hope that's okay that I'm talking about your bodies in that way. But it was just so beautiful to me when I look back at the pictures of when we were creating, and these times of, you know, this birth literally occur, or like this about to give birth, or this gestation happening in bodies as well as in the stories, which I think is just wild.
Yeah, totally. I remember in those very beginning days, we were doing exercises on the elements like fire and wind and water and earth, and just like embodying these things. And I think I was air. I was really into it. I am an air sign. I was like going for it. And I finished like whooshing around, and I was like hyperventilating and started sweating, and I couldn't stop sweating. And I was at the very beginning of my first trimester. And I don't even know if I knew I was pregnant yet or what, but my body was like, you can't do that. There are limits. And I'm speaking to you right now. It's like somehow really a part of the show itself. It's like, listen.
Yeah.
But an interesting thing about that, Neema, is because the haul truck driver was, you know, a large part of her was created when you were pregnant. I think you would say, I'm speaking for you, but that her rhythm really came out of that period of your life, right? Like her speaking rhythm, her thought process, like it was
definitely
a bit slower and more thoughtful and dreamy. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I am that way as well. And then on top of it, I slowed down even more and got into the slow rhythm of the haul truck driver. I want to drive a real haul truck. That would be really cool.
That would be so great. Listening to you, I feel like something that has always like really struck me about this process is how many happy accidents were part of the creation of it. Like the happy accident of not getting the rights to the written play, and the happy accident of like I feel like that the slowness and the dreaminess is so beautiful as part of the haul truck driver. And like that came from listening to sort of an outside, or that wasn't a thing we thought up in our brains. That was a thing that like unfolded. And even like this version of what was supposed to be a live theatrical play was us being like, okay, well, there was another lockdown. We did not think that was what was going to happen. And now we're pivoting to this new version of things. So I think this process for me has always really been like, you cannot control everything. And sometimes the things that you don't want to happen are like what makes things the most beautiful.
I love that. I would love to hear more about that process. Like, what was it like for you all to have to pivot so suddenly to this film version from a live adaptation?
It was not fun.
Definitely nerve-wracking. Yeah.
There were a lot of tears,
Mm-hmm.
I will say. I'll speak personally, but it was really hard to let go of the vision of what we hoped it would be, especially after such a long time making this show and waiting through the pandemic, right? We had been prepared to do it at the beginning of the pandemic, and then it got pushed back and it got pushed back again. And so finally, when we were like, yes, it's coming, And then, last minute to have to pivot. It was really, really hard. It was really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, super last minute, wasn't it? Sorry to cut you off, Darwin. It's just for like reference, that timeline is crazy. Claire had flown down to Kingston for rehearsals. Like it was happening, and then, or no, to Toronto, sorry, but yeah, it's really sudden.
Yeah, I mean, I think like we decided, we had a lot of conversations and we decided to pivot, like I would say maybe like 5 days before the Ontario government chose to shut down, and we would have had to pivot anyway, maybe a few more than 5 days. And I think the thing that for me really made the switch was like, what is our goal for this piece of art? And for me, the goal that I keep coming back to is like to bring joy and magic and possibility. And it was really starting to feel like the stress of putting like the team through in that health crisis was not honoring those goals, was not like part of what that is. And so I think the decision to pivot was like, first of all, like caring for the team, like making sure that the team felt safe and happy. And then, so once that decision, I was like, that's what I want for this piece. I want this piece to make people feel joyous coming to work and joyous coming to see it. And then it was like trying to make a film. Like I've barely made films ever. Like I've barely been on screen ever. And so it's such a different medium in terms of like what is beautiful and what is magical on film. And it's also such a different producing thing, like who you need to work with and what things you need to get in place, and like what that technical thing is that we need that I don't know what it is. Like all of that kind of stuff was really a lot of learning. And I'm very happy to be on this side of the learning. And some of the middle of the learning was just really like a lot of just trying to figure it out.
Thank God we had such a generous team with us, because we really asked so much of all the artists involved to have to come on this journey with us. And so, as soon as we made the decision, we gathered the whole team together and said, listen, like, this is what we're going to do. Are you prepared? Are you prepared to have to shift your vision, to put in the extra time? What can we do to make this comfortable for you? So we were super, super blessed with just an incredible team to work with. And they all just rose to the occasion. But, hearkening back to the happy accidents, it's like, holy shit. Claire just happened to bring on this amazing cinematographer that, would have been really difficult for us to find because we are not of the film world. And another friend who happened to see one of our posts on social media about us having to pivot, she runs a film production company. And so she just like magically appeared in our lives, and her company were super, super generous with equipment. I'm just talking right now, honey, with equipment. And so all of these really, really beautiful gifts came out of the pivot, which was amazing.
I'm curious because I know we talked about it a bit at the beginning for you three, and I know for myself, I learned so much with, like, as far as the pivot goes, with, having to think about it differently, that we knew it's a theater script, right? Because film scripts are so different than theater scripts. It's a theater script. We knew we were going to do it on stage, but as far as like the staging of it would have been very different. Not very, well, it would have been very different. And the way we worked with transitions, and then even just the acting style, the fact that every single one of you at some point looks right into the camera, talks right to us, and then is also talking away, but the size of how you're talking and like the way that you're able to fulfill the emotion without projecting the emotion. I'm curious with Yeah, how that felt for the three of you, and what's your experience of even just seeing it now? Sorry, Elsha, I'm just like, and now I'll ask a question. But just 'cause that for me, that was some of the exciting part, you know?
Mhm.
It was like I actually like it was super stressful, I won't lie for sure, but I learned so much. Like I just learned so much that I feel like a different artist at the end of this process, really.
Yeah, I was thinking about how it's neither here nor there. It's not a play and it's not a film, and like uh having watched it now, it's like, how did we how did that it works, and it is quite beautiful. How did we do that? Like it's an unknown genre, it's a new thing.
Mm.
We created a new thing, and yeah, and so that is like very exciting, and that in terms of the pivot and the stress and craziness, it's like, yeah, birth is pretty epic, as my daughter likes to say now. so so yeah, yeah, obviously stressful and crazy and, too much, but also beautiful and amazing, and a like really special new thing that's unique. I don't
Mhm.
know if that's like cheesy, you know, to call something out as unique and beautiful, but yeah, it really is. It's just, I don't know. I actually don't see much, so maybe everything looks like this, but but yeah, it was actually for my character, it felt like the least stretch. I was often quite nervous to perform the play version with this character I created. It seemed, I don't know, smaller and
Hmm.
not something that was giving to the audience so much as just like watching someone reflecting quietly. so um so I was pretty excited to see how that would manifest on a screen. Um, and then I wasn't excited anymore because it's just like nerve-wracking and ridiculous to watch yourself. But then I was able to watch the beauty and, like, I don't know, I don't think any of us have really done a lot of film work, but like the mastery in a matter of seconds, what felt like seconds and moments. The 2 days, we had 2 days to shoot it, and what happened in those 2 days seems, I know I was in it, but I also, just watching from the outside, is it's quite amazing.
Yeah. I think like to give a huge gratitude shout out to you, Claire. Like you spent so much time with us, like preparing and like giving feedback about like how our performances were. I'll speak for myself, like how my performance was coming across on film, and how to think about from an actor's perspective, like how to talk to film, because I spent quite a bit of time talking to the camera. And it was one of those things that, like any minuscule thing I'd done on film before, I had no sense of how it was going until I saw the final product. Whereas with theater, I've been doing it for so long that it feels like I can sort of sense the audience in a way, like I can feel how it's landing. And so I just wasn't at all practiced with that. And so Claire, you were really like a real like shepherd of that for me, of really like helping me understand how to talk to the camera and how to work with the camera. And then I think like for me, what was so wonderful and magical is like we had a conversation about what do we want to make? Do we want to make like an archival? Do we want to just like run the play like a play and film it? And we felt really strongly that we wanted to create something for the medium of film. And I think that allowed it to be this new thing, because it's a theater script, and we had sort of theater set up, but the team was really conscious about making this something that was for the medium of film. And I remember sort of having a thought midway through being like, oh, right, like the convention of film is that we're in sets and it looks naturalistic, and that's what we've all agreed film is, and that's different than theater. But there's no reason we can't make something using what is great about the medium of film that is also a little bit more like theater, a little bit more in the magical realm that I love about theater.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just quickly say that I think that this process like helped me get over my fear of cameras. I had been very reticent to do any film before this, and so maybe it is that like beautiful hybrid that we created that allowed me to sort of play in both pools. But yeah, by the end of the process, and again, like thanks to you, Claire, for sure, I felt like I could relate to the camera, whereas before any film work I had done, I always felt frozen by it and trapped by it. Yeah.
I mean, I love your praise, and then we can move on, but it's so lovely. But back at all three of you, because, and I think this also speaks to long-term creative relationships. Like, I felt so much trust from each and every one of you. Like, once we made the decision, it was just like we all gave ourselves over to this, and we knew we were trying stuff that we hadn't tried before, like this specific thing, even if we've done some film before. But we like allowed ourselves to just go there and to really play. And that to me was, I think it took all four of us to be super on board, as you say, as well as like the team that gathered around us, but in that place of going like, okay, sure, this is going to be the world of what this is. This is what we're making together. And it was, yeah, you're all, I love you all so much.
So much love. It really is such a feat, like to create something brand new after having worked at it for so long. I'm really curious. A few of you have talked about your characters so far. I'm really curious about how you came to the specifics of each of these three women that guide the play. They're so central. Obviously, they are the whole thing. Yeah, how did you arrive at who these people are?
I don't remember. Like, I do. Okay, I remember we played this theater game called The Hot Seat.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Where one person sits in the hot seat and everyone else can just ask them questions. And one of the rules is that you have to answer their question. I can't remember. Claire, do you remember?
Yeah, you do. You have to answer it, and you don't have to be truthful. Like, so your character could be lying. Your character does not have to be telling the truth, but your character does have to answer the question.
Yeah, totally. I remember that I was like so afraid to get into the hot seat, but I was already supposed to be the haul truck driver, so I don't know where that already had come. And I don't know if we decided already, or if when I sat down, it was like, I choose haul truck or something. And you all were just asking me questions, and I'm like, I don't know anything about driving a super mega truck in the oil sands. I don't know anything, but the rule is that I have to answer. And it was fun. And I think actually this is where the rhythm of my character started, because I was thinking and talking. So I would speak like this, trying to come up with something, I don't think I'm that great of an improv actor. but it ended up working. I used it.
Yeah, I don't know the order either, because I do remember we interviewed all those women, and I know at least one of them had I think it was Trish who had haul truck driver experience. But then we also watched the documentary about the haul truck driver who sang karaoke.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know where, because like I know that stuff, but all of that seemed to like kind of swirl within the game. So you might start a game, not have an answer, and then we get the answer by talking to somebody, or we get the answer by doing some research, and then we come back and right? Like it kind of was braided that way.
Yeah, totally. Because I know when that hot seat happened, I was making stuff up. There were no answers yet. We didn't know anything. But I think I said something about karaoke. in that time. And then we happened to find this amazing documentary, and this woman is or no, it was a man. I can't remember.
Woman. I remember.
Oh, yeah,
I remember being a woman. Yeah.
And she's a haul truck driver who likes to carry. I was like, this is unbelievable. I don't know what's happening. Dreams do come true.
What I love to think about and remember is like how the different styles of each of the characters came about. Like Darwin was rooting her character in stand-up comedy, and I happened to write my character in poetry, and I have no idea how that started. I don't, like, Claire would give us timed writing sessions. So we would do these hot seats, and then it would be like, okay, take 20 minutes and go and write a piece about whatever, the first time, your first memory or whatever it was. And for some reason, I can't remember why or how, I don't know if anybody else remembers, but the bartender came out as in verse. And so we just ran with that. And then the style of her shaped a lot of her backstory. So we're like, why on earth would a bartender speak in verse? Oh, okay, well, maybe it's because she's actually this person who's really connected to the land and connected to healing and knowing. And so there's this subconscious poetry coming through her that is almost undetectable. I'm talking. That's almost undetectable.
Yeah, I think, like, I feel like there were sort of three elements. There was like the hot seat exercises, there was the writing exercises, and there was the research. And I think for the bartender's the butcher's occupation, it came from this podcast that I listened to and that we had been talking about women and about what roles women play in society and the commodification of women and what is a woman's worth and how, and all of this kind of stuff. And then listening to that, I was fascinated by thinking about women in that sort of stereotypically male role. And so then that's sort of where that side of it came. But then there's this side of like the emotional side of it that I think all the characters have, that there's who they were presenting to the world, and then there's who their authentic selves are. And I think that piece of it came a lot more from the visceral exercises we were doing, and like all of the sort of more emotional work. And then I just remember, like, the biggest memory I have of sort of the creation is I remember we were another sort of like twist of fate is we had to work seated, because of like circumstance, we couldn't be in the space anymore. And we were like, okay, well, we've done all these work, we've done all these hot seats, we've done all these writings, let's see what we remember. And we were sitting together and we recorded, and it was just sort of like whoever felt like they needed to talked, and we recorded it based on all of these disparate things we've been working on. And I remember stopping, like we all sort of knew when it was ended, and we stopped the recording. We were like, I think that's the first draft. Like, I think that, and that's for me the moment I remember everything like coming together.
I don't remember that at all. Like, not at all.
I do remember that. Yeah,
I do. I remember, recording.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and being like, whoa. Oh, I love it. I love how there's more than one way to make a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a beautiful takeaway. There really is more than one way to make a thing. I just want to say all these improv games I keep learning about sound like absolute hell. Every time anybody describes them, it's just like my worst nightmare.
I've even made you play some, right?
Yeah, you know what? I think you take it easy on the Downstage staff, luckily. But it's incredible that like from this game came these incredible characters that just like shape the script so beautifully. I'm so excited for people to see this. I think we're coming to time, but I hope that everybody watches this beautiful piece of art that's neither a film or a piece of theater and exists in the liminal space between. It is so wonderful, and you are also wonderful. And I'm so thankful that you took the time to talk with me today.
Well, thank you. It was so lovely to chat with you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.